So, welcome everyone. This is your December Ellii support webinar, Keeping It Real, examples from your Minnesota colleagues. I'm very happy to introduce to you today our panelists. We've got some fantastic Ellii super users, Tammy Twiggs of the Hub Center, Jordan Phillips of the More Empowerment Program, and Melody Stapleton of Learning in Style. So there's Tammy, and you'll meet the others soon. Um, so just a very quick recap of Ellii. We are piloting Ellii as a statewide, state-supported distance learning platform this year. So all staff and volunteers who are associated with a Minnesota adult education program are able to access at no additional cost a teacher account. Ellii is really a great platform. You can use it as a teacher, as a curriculum resource for your English classes, and it can also be used as a distance learning platform to generate distance learning proxy hours for your program. We're really excited that we're able to offer this at no additional cost to all staff and volunteers in Minnesota. If you do not yet have your own staff account, there is a training. It's a little bit long because we deal with a lot of technical aspects of setting up classes and learner accounts, but we feel like it's really important. We want everyone to be on the same page and understand how to set things up correctly. So I will put that link in the chat in Zoom if you still need to take that training. You just view a slide deck, you submit two very short quizzes, and then you submit a training evaluation. And after you've completed those pieces, we will send you an invitation to join the statewide account. So I'll just drop that link in the chat here. And then I'm going to turn it over to our first presenter, Jordan.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I thought I would start off our presentation on what it was like for me to get my classroom up and running, okay, on Ellii Solo, or Ellii and Ellii Solo, okay. So just a little bit about More. More is a program in, I guess, East St. Paul. There are 123 students right now and 20 different countries. Although I would say predominantly we are Karen. We have a lot of Karen students. I teach the middle, or one of the two middle levels. I teach a level 2 class, and you can see the CASA scores there. So that kind of gives you a sense of what we're working with in the class, okay? And I do have quite a range of students. And the reason I bring that up is, as you're all familiar, the younger students tend to be a lot more comfortable using their phones, and the older students tend to need a lot more guidance when we're doing on the phones and practicing learning on their phones. So let's see. Can we go to the next slide, since I'm not running this? There we go. Okay, so when I started thinking about, well, Ellii came up right as an option of a distance learning, and I started thinking about the fact that we have vacations and days off towards the end of the semester, right, with Thanksgiving and then the holidays that we're all coming up onto. And so my goal was to start, once we could start using Ellii, was to start them and get them ready for December. Specifically, I really wanted to have this 2-week-long break, and I wanted to see them generate as many distance learning hours as they could for our school, but as well as for their learning, because we all know when they come back from break after a couple of weeks, their English has really tanked, and so you always usually take a long time to get them back up and going again. So that was my goal. So I had a really long range goal of what I was going to do over the 3 months. So the very first thing I did was I started working with Ellii as a class. So I opened up the teacher account, would project that, and we would walk through all of the steps in the different units together as a group, so that no one was singled out. Obviously, people know and people don't know, but they could feel comfortable working with it and learn from other people. And we could figure out what all of the language meant, like submit or I'm finished or next task. And we talked through it many, many times as we did this. I would say that phase of getting them comfortable as a group probably took about 4 weeks. We don't do it every day, but we do it several times a week. And so just working through this and doing it for like about an hour or 45 minutes a day, and getting them more and more self-sufficient. Like when I could tell that they were getting comfortable, the next thing that I did was I created the classroom. So of the options that you have with Ellii, I decided to not invite my students with QR codes or send them the link, because of their language level and their comfort level. I thought it would be much better for me to set up the class and then teach them what their login was and what their password was. So that's what I did. And as you can see, one of my colleagues suggested that I add myself as a student to the class so that I could actually see what they were seeing on their phones. And I can't emphasize enough how beneficial that was. Because the teacher view and the student view, sometimes it can be really different in the way it's set up, because on the computer and doing the projection, your laptop looks different, obviously, than the way it's working on their phones. So being as a student, I could see what they were doing. I could practice ahead of time and get myself really comfortable with what they were going to be seeing. Okay. All right, next slide, please. All right, and so then, because I have all of my students, what I do is I text them a link. So I generated the link, emailed it to myself, and then texted it out one by one to each student. And I will say this is somewhat slow and painstaking in the classroom, because you have some, students who are rather eager to start clicking and doing and getting themselves going, and you have other students who are struggling to figure out how do they open the text from the teacher. Okay, so this does take a lot of time. And so my first day, I would say half an hour, when I was texting this to them, it was very slow. It was about all we did in the class was text them and get them ready to open and see what they had to do. And then once everybody was in, then we say, okay, log in. And then I had to wander around and help, the 15 students log in. One of the things I did do, Ellii has you have the ability to print off your student list with all of their usernames. So I printed that off and I cut out strips, and I gave each student their strip with their username and their password, which I had to write in for them, as well as keeping a copy for myself so that whenever they lost it, or I could easily find it again. But I really wanted to make them self-sufficient, because the idea is that they do this on vacation time. Okay, so I don't really want them to rely on me to do this. So once I got them in, and like I said, the first day was just getting them logged in. The second day we logged in, which went a lot faster. And then we practiced the same lesson all together. So I logged in as a student on my overhead. They logged in on their phones, and we walked through it step by step. Then once they were really comfortable with that, and that probably took a couple of weeks of practicing like that. I started to assign them homework. And some will do and some will not do it. But I did start assigning them homework. And I should say, all of this was in Ellii Yellow, not Ellii Blue, Ellii Solo. This was all Ellii Yellow. So I'm controlling the content that they can see. I'm controlling the arrangements of everything that they can see. So that's what I did with the first, I would say 2 months. That whole process probably took me about 2 months. This past week, I showed them how to access the past lessons so they can see current and they can see past. So now that they're comfortable using the yellow Ellii and finding the things that they want to do in that, then I also showed them how to find the things that we had already done and they had finished, or we had finished with in class. And then we started test running with Ellii Solo this week. So the very first thing that I did with Ellii Solo was set them up in class, and we did the intake test together. So when you go on to Ellii Solo, which is the Ellii Blue part, every student takes about 30 minutes to do the test. as long as they don't give up. It takes about 30 minutes. So I actually set aside class time so I could help every student log in. I could help them find Ellii Solo because they were so used to Ellii Yellow. Going Ellii Blue was causing consternation. And then we did the test in class. So I didn't help them obviously with the test, but I helped them navigate how to do the test because they have to like listen to their audio and check that, yes, my audio was working. And then there's a lot of initial screens that they have to go through. So doing it in class gave them a lot of comfort, and they had feedback from me or support from me as they got going on that. So that was this past week. And so we're going to practice a little bit more in class. And then I will start having them work on Ellii Solo over the break, hopefully, and or using Ellii Yellow with my lessons. And I just saw that somebody said Ellii Solo wasn't working. I will say I've been in touch with Ellii a lot this week because Ellii Solo, none of my students could use it on their phones. It was working fine for me on my laptop, going through Chrome, etc. All of that was fine, but it was not working on anyone's phones, including my own, as I logged in as a student on my phone. So Ellii, they worked with their program developers, and they did some kind of patch. So today, Ellii Solo was working fine on everybody's phones. So I would say if you try it and it's not working, get in touch with Ellii. And then I don't want to go to the next two screens yet, but I do have some slides to show you if we have time at the end of one of the ways that I use Ellii, that one of the ways I've used some of the ideas from Ellii to modify. So if we have time, we can come back to that. And that's it for me. I don't know if anybody has any questions, or are we going to take questions all at the end?
We can take a few questions now if you would like to raise your hand, turn on your microphone, or just type in the chat. And while people are taking a second to do that, if it's okay with you, I will just briefly show these
Yeah,
slides because I
sure.
think it's so helpful to see examples.
Yeah, and when we come back to this, we can talk about it. But basically, this is is there a second one also, Elizabeth? I think
Yeah.
this is the harder one at the end of the unit, and this is the beginning one on day 2 of a new unit. And it's based on how, what I learned. I did an Ellii webinar on maximizing student talk time, I think it was called. And I viewed that, and they have an option for discussion starters, which is great, but it's all at the high beginning or intermediate or advanced level, which is beyond my class. So I took their idea and then I modified it in this way, and we can talk more about that. It looks to me like nobody actually has a question yet. Okay, you were saying, okay, all right. So yes, when I printed out from Ellii, when you go to students, when you go into Ellii and you click on your class, and then you can click on students. That's one of the options that you have in their tab, like Ellii students and Ellii Solo, I think. It actually pulls up a list of all your students, and it has their username. And their avatar. We had to learn the word avatar. So it has an avatar, their name, and then their username, which is like a 2 letters based on your school, and then their SID number. Yeah, thank you. So if you go over to everything, all right, excellent. Yeah, and then you just open one of your classes. Okay, and at the top, lesson planner students. If you click on students, yep, there you go. It pulls something like that up, and then it shows you what their username is. Okay, so the student's name and then the username. And then what I did hand write their password because I was the one controlling. I gave them all their usernames and I gave them all the same password. So then I only have to remember one password. So I did write it down and I cut this paper that you're seeing right here. I cut it into strips, and I wrote username and highlighted their username. And then I wrote password and highlighted their password. And I gave that strip to each student, as well as keeping a copy for myself. But
how did you print it, maybe is my question too.
I
Did
think
you
I
take
think I
screenshots or
I'm trying to remember if I did a screenshot or if there was a way to actually
you just printed the page or
I think I
something?
just printed the page and then just yeah.
Okay.
Um
Just because I'm laughing because that is something I was going to talk about on one of my
oh,
slides
sorry.
too, but
Okay.
mine no, no, like, but that's helpful because
Okay.
I'm like
Yeah.
I'm screenshotting it and then putting it in a
Hmm.
document and then printing out. So I was just curious,
Yeah.
like maybe I missed
Yeah.
some, but it's kind of similar. So that's still good to see. Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. But still
Yeah, and I
helpful,
think
hopefully, for people
the
to
other thing I
see the
do recommend
process.
is, yeah, that whole idea of if you're creating the password, do that was another teacher's idea previous what for a different app that we were using to use the same password. Then you only have to remember one,
That
and then
is
it
what we
really,
do, actually. Yeah.
yep, yep,
Okay, perfect.
exactly.
Thank you.
All right, I will finish speaking now, and someone else can take it away.
Hello, can y'all hear me okay? My name is Tammy Twiggs, and I teach GED at the Hub Center in St. Paul. And some of you I know, and some of you might be new to me. I decided to pilot it this year at the Hub Center. Our supervisor, Renata, asked that one person from each department volunteer. And because I had attended the Summer Institute and I went to the Ellii webinar, excuse me, the Summer Institute develop the training at the conference last summer, I wasn't sure that it would be appropriate for GED level. So I was really excited when I got there and I realized that some of the materials in there, like the dilemmas and the polls, and some of the lessons actually go up that high. So I decided to do this with my in-person learners. We meet 4 days a week, 2 hours each day here in person at the Hub Center. I thought being in the room with people as we start a new platform that would not only help them, but I needed that for myself so that I could figure out what I was doing. And as I was doing this, I wanted to support my learners because as they come together in my GED class, they are both American born and ELL students, and each of those groups needs different kinds of support. So that was intentional on my part. I do teach online, but I didn't want to use it yet. I wanted to see what this was about. So in order to pilot Ellii, I had to do the intensive and then do some extra training. But I will tell you, it's super user friendly and easy. And it's very well put together. You can get through it well. And then once you're in, the fun part for me is always doing all the searching. So as I mentioned, if you do teach those higher levels, or if you have people in your program who teach GED or college prep, you can definitely find appropriate materials and content at that level. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what other ways that it's useful as well. So what I tend to do in this one group is I pick one Ellii lesson per week. I'm not using Ellii solo yet, but I peruse the entire library and I pick one lesson and I get the reading and I make a copy of that. And then I use AI, I use Chat GPT or Magic School to create a couple questions because I want the learners to engage with the content with me first. And then when they go on to Ellii and practice, one of the best things is that we are able to practice things that I have not been able to practice with my learners. So the AI will create some discussion questions, some writing prompts, some test prep questions, not what's in Ellii, something additional that we can do during class, and it will be pretty robust. So this month we're doing argument, which is really hard, and some of those really tough topics like the right to die, euthanasia. They've got in there, they've got gun control. There's a lot of really good ones that are so appropriate for what I'm trying to teach. So once we get through the week, then I assign those Ellii lessons to the students in their Google Classroom. I set a 1 week due date. And one of the benefits of using Ellii, if we can go to that next one, number 8, please, is that 60% of my learners in my class have been very active, meaning I can go in there and check and I can see that they're completing all of the modules. Now, I will say very quickly that I use Read Theory and Ellii both, and I was trying to do that to see which one the learners would do more of. And I would say the Read Theory is excellent, as you know, for reading comprehension support, but there's no writing practice. So Ellii, when you turn on the AI feature in Ellii, students are able to write out sentences and the AI will correct them. Their capitalization, their sentence structure, their subject verb agreement, whether they're putting in punctuation. And that was really a piece that I was missing in my GED class because I can't correct writing continuously. It's very intensive to do that, as many of you know. So having this extra support tool as a way to help my students practice their writing regularly has been super amazing. So I would encourage you to check that out. And then the rest of my learners, either they're doing read theory because they prefer that, or they're engaging partially, like they might do half of the assignment, but they don't complete the rest of it. Okay. And then we can continue on to the next one. The feedback so far, what my students have said that they like about it is the sentence writing practice, lots of good vocabulary practice, and then there's a listening and speaking feature where they'll get a prompt and they have to respond, and the AI will literally give them a response back as to whether they responded well in a complete sentence. So not just writing practice, but that speaking and listening practice. I haven't had that at the GED level. I typically don't tend to that, but it really does differentiate for my ELLs specifically. But it's also been a very big hit with my American-born students as well. And next slide, please.
And Tammy, if you don't mind real quick, I just want to
Sure.
show everyone where you can find that AI option. So if
Yeah.
you go to your class, the lesson planner area, and then, oh, maybe not, details. Yes, okay, details and then the settings. So this is where it has your feedback mode. I think suggested is the default, so it will give you the teacher the AI suggested feedback, and then you can edit the feedback and send it to the students. Or if you have a larger class and we're like, I just don't have time for that, you can set it to automatic, where the learners will just get the AI feedback instantly.
Yes, thank you for showing that, Elizabeth, because in my building, I'm not the administrator, it's Jessica S. So she is able to, load all those students for me, which is very helpful to me since I do have a lot of learners and I am a full-time teacher. So I have numerous classes that I have to teach. So finding a way to do this that would also fit in my schedule, because I know all of you are very, very busy, you have to sort of dig in and figure out how you're going to use it in a way that's going to work for you so it's not too labor intensive. And so that was the way that it worked out for me. I did test it a couple times with another teacher, and we were very impressed at how the AI was super concise, even catching things that need to be capitalized like proper nouns. So again, good sentence rating practice. If you could go to the next slide, please. So for me, again, I'm just going to talk about the fact that in person is traditional teaching, and I do have that kind of class. I also do teach online, so I'm not using it in my online classes this year. And so as I blend the two things, I'm always trying to grab something from a platform like Common Lit, or I was looking in Read Theory, but I didn't find the kinds of text that I needed. Whereas in Ellii, if you look at my screen right now, you can look at the bottom. We started out with something super easy that I would not normally teach, which is the history of Halloween, but we were doing a social studies mini unit on reading, and the students really enjoyed it. And that was at that, I think it was a lower intermediate level. And then we went to a Thanksgiving lesson because we are looking at the myths around Thanksgiving. And then as you can see, we got into some harder material. So King Charles ousts Prince Andrew. That was a pretty hot topic for learners to try to sort of chew on that and what's going on with the whole Epstein files. I don't want to get into that because it gets a little bit racy, but it will give you a disclaimer and say this is pretty controversial material, so please FYI be aware what you're teaching. And of course, at my level, I'm always aware of that. But my students really enjoyed reading about that. As we got into argument, you can see I've got the lesson about euthanasia, the right to die. That one was a really good one. And then this week we focused on the one Surgeon General calls for social media warning labels. So this material, all three of these, actually three of them are at the high intermediate level. and then two of them are at that advanced level. So again, it does go all the way down, but it does go all the way up. And that's really helpful for those of us who teach those higher level learners, whether it's, that high level ELL class or it's a college prep, or maybe you're teaching your GED learners. Okay. All right. So I was going to do a poll, and I think that Elizabeth is going to run it. And if we look at the next screen, Elizabeth, I think I did put which one I wanted us to do, and I think it's appropriate for today, right, everybody? Are y'all ready to practice? So Elizabeth's going to launch the poll, and all you have to do is use your phone, and let's give it a whirl. I think you can search at the top for it, Elizabeth, a little bit more easily. If you go back to that slide, I had the title on that last slide. Um, Eyes on the Road. There you go. So I wanted to show this very quickly. She's going to launch that, and then we'll stay on that screen, Elizabeth, because it's got a nice search bar. So if you can please take out your phone, you can either go to your search engine, you can do Chrome or whatever, Safari, ellii.com/play, or you can use the little QR code, put in the 51349. You can use your first name. And we're just going to show you for that particular topic. It's a really good way to launch into that topic about when we're driving, are we supposed to be doing other things? So we have a lot of people here. As soon as you have your entire class joined and you'll be able to see them by name, then you can go ahead and start. And what I like about this feature, go ahead and hit continue, is that it allows you to start out with yes or no questions. So go ahead and respond to that, please. And then we can see in real time on the screen people's responses. At the bottom, you can see a stop and discuss button. This one might not be necessary to discuss, but some of the more meaty questions might be really interesting. People can throw up, yep, emojis like that. If you're surprised, if you agree, if you disagree. But let's look at some of the other questions, I think, if we go forward to the next one. I'm going to show you vocabulary, but we're probably not going to do that one. So again, hazardous, multitasking, GPS. My level, the people would mostly know that, but maybe at a lower level, that would be vocabulary that you would need to work on, okay? So there's a little bit with that, and then there's some questions that I think are very fun. So you can agree or disagree. Go ahead and read what's on the screen. I do this because I just bought a brand new vehicle and everything's smart in it, and I find myself very distracted because there's so many things to touch on the dash and the screen, and I don't realize that I'm taking my eyes off the road, even as I'm just pushing one small button to get to a location, right? So if you wanted to, you could stop and discuss. Let's go to the next one. What about this one? This is my favorite. We all do it. We've all done it, right? Is it dangerous? Is it multitasking? Should we do it? Should we not do it? This would be a fun one to talk about, I think, with our learners, because it's just an aha moment like, wow, I didn't realize that even that 1 or 2 seconds could cause me to take my eyes off the road, and somebody might stop in front of me. So we can go to the next one. Changing the music. Well, I didn't used to be because I pushed a button, but now if I'm clicking around on all these channels on my smart screen, I've noticed that I'm getting very distracted. So I don't know. I guess maybe I'm not used to my vehicle. Okay. Just a couple more. Talking. Talking? Do we get distracted while we're talking? Isn't that interesting? Might stop and talk about how long have you been driving? Are you a new driver? Is it better when you're a new driver to not do this? Is it a little bit dangerous when it's snowing out like today? Okay, next one. Not sure I like that one. What do you all think? Eh. Okay, next one, please. I know I'm going fast. So it allows you to go deeper. So this would be a question where we would chew on it for a while. You might even read it out loud with your students if they need that support, or if they don't, mine would not. I would just go ahead and let them read it and respond, but I would probably at my GED level, not stop and talk on the other ones so much as I would stop and talk on these harder ones for sure. Yes, you can find this when you do the search. It's super easy when you go to, I'll show you that in just a moment. Here's another one. And you can see on the screen we're at 12 out of 13, so you can see how many are left to go. If you're pressed for time, you could maybe skip past a couple of them. So that's kind of handy to know, how much you've got going, and this is the final one. This one I might turn into a writing prompt. Isn't that amazing? I would totally use that as a writing prompt. And I might turn around and say, let's talk more about that and let's support it with some opinions. Let's put some details into a paragraph. That would be a really good way to extend that lesson. So that would be a poll. And when you're done, thanks for participating, etc. If we go back to the slide deck, I will show you very quickly if we go back to your screen. So when you're searching, I put a number 1 here. Do you see on the screen, you're going to want to click on everything and everything pops up. So you would find the polls. You can see polls right on the screen there. And you would search through them to see what pertains to your level. You can search by ability level. You can search by content. The dilemmas are also interesting because it requires people to sort of have a pro-con approach to something. Lessons is where I focus. So if we were going to be looking for a specific lesson, that is where the meat is, and it goes from all the way to, that NRS level 1 all the way up to the top of the NRS levels. So from, the ELL side all the way up to the ABE side and everything in between, you would definitely find tons and tons of stuff. So Elizabeth, if we could show one more thing on your Ellii, yes. If we could go back just to that search. And if you go back to where you were, we can see on that everything page, if we click on lessons, yep, right there. This is where everything is, and it's a little overwhelming at first. So as you see, you can go into any of these and they're going to tell you how many lessons are there. They're going to tell you the beginning of the band up to the top end of the band. So you can search this way. Once you go inside each of these tiles, you can set it to a specific level. And so my time, I'm doing this as my personal learning plan at the Hub Center for this year, and we're given like 10 hours per year to work on a personal learning plan. So I do a lot of my learning plan time searching for content that's going to match well with my GED content. And then I'm going to, put a scope and sequence together and share it with my team and then with my colleagues here at the Hub Center. So there's a lot of ways to search. I think that's probably the best way, but there you can go into each of these tiles and you can search, and there's filters. There's little drop-down filters for all kinds of things that you can do in here. I think my time is probably up, and I want to make sure there's time for questions and for my colleagues to also present. So thank you so much for listening. Oh, final thing, there's always new content. They send you an email. It's very provocative. I always look at it and go, ooh, look at that one. That looks amazing. And luckily, I feel like I understand my learners, so when I bring it to class, they seem very engaged. So very engaging lessons in here. I'm super excited about it. And after this year, we'll see how else we can use it here at the Hub Center. Thanks for listening, everybody. Appreciate it so much. Which product am I using?
So I think just Ellii classes, right? Not Ellii solo at this
I'm
point.
I'm gonna do solo, but I'm not there yet. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I was just showing there's a calendar too. If you're not sure what to teach, you can always check out that calendar and it'll provide timely suggestions.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much, everybody. I appreciate it.
All right, yeah. If there are any other questions for Tammy, feel free to throw them in the chat or ask. But otherwise, I will go ahead. My name is Melody Stapleton. I work at a school called Learning in Style. It is an English school for adult immigrants over here in Minneapolis. And we're under the organization called Acola. Um, I am a technology teacher here, so I kind of work in the computer lab and I support the students in the classes a few ways. So one of the ways is that they come down to the computer lab during their like allotted time. Every class here has a time that they come down in the week, and then maybe they're coming down to practice English more, but then I'm just providing them with the supports they might need for sorry, you guys. I'm in my classroom right now and the lights just turn off, so just bear with me. Apologies. Um, but yeah, they come down and they continue their English practice on the computer, but then I help them and support them with digital literacy skills they might need or supports. Some students sometimes come down for one-on-one support. And this year I am teaching some specific computer classes. So I wear a few hats here at our school. We have about 6 English levels represented here. And at least 4 out of the 6 levels are using Ellii right now. So we've been really getting that going, and that's been exciting. I am our main admin for Ellii. So that's kind of more my experience with Ellii is sometimes the back end there where I've been creating the classes and doing all of these things, but still also helping a lot of the teachers figure out how to use it. But I've also been gathering a lot of information from them since they are using it as well. And so that's some of the things I'll talk a little bit about, maybe other tips and tricks of how some of the teachers who are a little newer to using it or have used it a while, how they've appreciated it in their situations, especially supporting English learners, but maybe too, if it's a helpful idea of what you might be able to do in your own classrooms. I wanted to share those as well. And also maybe some other ideas from the admin side, if you are admin, things I'm trying to do too to make things easier. We are a smaller school, so even though it's a lot, it's much easier for me to probably handle, whereas I know some of us have talked about larger schools having to be on the admin side is probably pretty overwhelming. So we're also really interested in hearing things that you guys have tried and things like that as I'm sharing things. So you can go to the next slide. One thing that some of my teachers have talked about, which again, some of these might be kind of similar to what our other presenters have talked about, I'm not sure, but one thing some people do is in Ellii, I tried to share a screenshot at the bottom there. If you use Ellii or not, there are a lot of options of using either using online tasks or PDFs. Not every lesson will have that option, so just bear that in mind. But it's really nice how a lot of them do have both options, so that if you just want to be using Ellii for the PDF side of it, and you can print those off and use them in your class, that's awesome. There's also the online version, but a lot of people that I'm working with here are starting to print off the PDFs. They use that in their class time. And then the next day or later in the week, when they come down to the computer lab, they've also assigned those online tasks to their students so that now they're kind of getting that repetition, and also having to use online platforms can be a lot for people sometimes. And so some teachers have found it's a really nice strategy to, now that they've had the content, that it's a little less of that cognitive load maybe as they're trying to figure out how to use it online. For example, it's kind of a helpful way to let them figure that out or learn how to use the platform, but it's still also really helpful repetition and practice. So that's been a really nice little tip or strategy that some of the teachers I work with are using. One I just learned the other day. There's the flashcard feature in Ellii. They have a bunch of flashcards, first of all, that you can go and look at that are related to content you might be teaching. They have created packs of them that you can assign for students. There are flashcards in lessons already built in, and that's really helpful. But one thing I learned from a teacher is that you can go in and create custom flashcards. And I love this because that's always one thing I feel like I run against sometimes, or let's say I do try to use Ellii a little bit, and maybe I need some visuals for teaching computer content. If you see my screenshot at the bottom, for example, the one at the bottom that says use the computer, originally it said like computer science or something. I'm like, I don't want that. I just want to practice talking about using the computer or something. And you can go in and edit certain flashcards. And I think that's so helpful because, again, Ellii has so much incredible, helpful content. But as we know, like a lot of us are trying to combine different platforms, different content and everything. And it can be a lot when you can't quite find the right thing. So I was so excited to learn this myself. So I tried to create a screenshot of when you can go into like maybe a flashcard set. Okay, maybe what I'm trying to say is you can create custom flashcard sets when you go. Maybe I should have probably included that in some screenshots too, Elizabeth. I don't know if that would have been more helpful. Sorry. But when you figure out how to create your custom sets, like you can just pick the pictures that they have. But then once you have your custom set, you can then also edit it and then put in your own custom words. Like maybe it is close to what you're teaching, but you think maybe the vocabulary word is slightly different than you want it to be. You can just do what you want with that. So, oh, this is a great point too. Thank you, Rebecca, that when you do change the text, that the audio for your card still works. That is a hot tip. Thank you for sharing that. So that's also really awesome and helpful so that your students can hear it. Because again, a lot of our students are English learners, we are very reliant on hearing what does that word sound like too, and how can we practice pronouncing it. So thank you for sharing that. That's awesome. So another little tip for you when you are trying to figure out how to just use some of these things in your class, whether you're using Ellii for lots of things or only maybe for something like this. That was a really helpful one that I think can match a lot of the things you're doing in your classes. And it's funny that, yeah, this is why I asked Jordan earlier. On the admin side, we create all the classes and I'm trying to help the teachers. We're trying to create a system since they come down to the computer lab for us, for example. I like to have all of their sign-in information. And that's something, again, I will say, I don't think it's the top best solution at the moment, but it's what I've figured out so far. Kind of like you saw Jordan went to the page of students and then just maybe printed out that page. That's very similar to what I do. What I do is I take a screenshot. This is like an example of maybe how you have the screenshot. We have the avatar, a little picture, but then because I'm providing documents also for teachers for their classes to access in kind of a Google Doc situation we have at Learning in Style, I was needing to find ways to make separate documents of their sign-in information. I did try at first like a Google sheet, and that was just way too much work. And so for now, I have been screenshotting student information, putting it in a document, then printing that out and cutting those up. Again, it's not the slickest, but it does take away a lot more work instead of having to enter every single one into a spreadsheet or something like that. It depends on also how you do it. We at Learning in Style only we use the same username and password right now for Ellii. So again, when you print it off at the bottom, you'll see their account information. We just use the same one. So it's a little easier for us. Of course, I don't know if we've shared it, Elizabeth. I know some teachers have passed around some self-made items where students can maybe write in their information. That's always a good thing too. That is extra work, but there's lots of ways we're all trying to share resources. Oh, thank you, Katie. You can go click on that. That was one thing that I got from Katie, which is really helpful. If you want, you can ahead of time have all the students write it out and then they can keep it with them. They might lose it though, figure out your systems. It's a thing we're all working on, but it is really helpful to have them maybe write it out. So they're also getting that practice. In my classes, when I teach, we really have to think about capitalization, lowercase. That's really important. There are no spaces. So sometimes that can be a great lesson in itself to have them write down their information and then apply it by signing in. So there's lots of strategies. On the admin side, for me, I don't have the time to have to do that with every single class. So this is my strategy. But again, if y'all ever have better strategies you'll find, we would love to hear them. So, but definitely check out Katie's link there. It's really helpful. We can go to the last slide for me. Guess my light turned on. One thing some of us have discussed too, as we were talking about Ellii solo, one thing just to be aware of that some of us are trying to figure out, and again, please chime in if you have figured out any better way to deal with this. When you have students use Ellii solo, in my classes, I've been having them all at least try to take the placement test so that they then have access to more levels on like the home page of Ellii solo, kind of what you see in the screenshot here. The placement test kind of gives them that little star to say, this is your level, start here. One thing I teach my students is like, okay, here's the level it gave you. If you want a lower level, you can go lower. The problem here that we're running into is that they cannot access the higher practice from this homepage. I think some of us have discussed that maybe if they go into their library, they can filter to have beginning, intermediate, advanced. So they still have access, I think, to some higher stuff in some way, but it's a lot more clicking and exploring, and it's just a little more difficult. We haven't figured out, or I don't know, we haven't quite fully figured out how to change this level, except for that they have to retake the placement test. I know Elizabeth and I were talking a little bit or trying to figure that out, but I feel like, yeah, there might be some settings on the teacher side in Ellii teacher and classes side for some placement tests, but here we haven't quite figured out how to change it here. So just be aware that when you're going to have your students take the placement test for Ellii solo, one thing I do is I make sure my students at least know when they're going to take the test. It's timed, it's 30 minutes, and don't try too hard on it. If you don't know a question, go ahead and just make a guess because it's timed. And if they don't get to all of the modalities that they're being tested in, it will place them really low. So at least try to like get them prepared to do their best. Do they know how to move forward? Because at least if they're tested on the rest of them, it hopefully would give them a higher level, but they still might not. So there's just things that we're trying to like figure out workarounds with and stuff. Again, you can show them how to use the library. You probably have lots of students who can use the computer and can figure that out. But especially for a lot of our students who struggle with that, this is something we're working through and trying to find different workarounds. So again, feel free to share any strategies if any of you have come across something better. But it's just kind of helpful to know going into it how to maybe prepare your students to do their best on the placement test and get through it. So hopefully they don't get placed too low.
Yeah, so Melody, if you don't mind, I'll just
I don't
share my this is one of my student accounts, and I think I must have taken the placement test, but I just clicked through it, right? So I was placed at pre-beginner. And so my learning pathways, yeah, what I see right away are only pre-beginner. I can click on other tabs, but they're grayed out. I can't actually access those. But if I go up to my library tab, it defaults to beginner, but I can actually access some higher level content. I don't think I can get to everything, but there are
to the
quite a
library.
few, there are quite a few things that I can access.
Yeah.
The other thing, this does not work if you have your class set up as a multi-level class. But you can change your class settings again. See, this is the one that doesn't have real students in it. So if I go to my class details, so here I can set a level for my class, and you can set just one level or multiple levels. I don't think this overrides the placement test results, but if your learners have just skipped the placement test, then they should default to whatever you have set as your class level. I'm also not 100% sure how it works if learners are enrolled in more than one class, and if the different classes have different settings. But if they're only in one class, you can set that one class to one level, and then it should default to that.
That's a helpful distinction because maybe that's why we were showing. We have a lot of students in multiple classes, and I was like, like I thought we have those settings changed. So that's a good point. Is maybe if they're in multiple classes, maybe that's why we're not seeing that yet. So explore, everyone, try things out.
And Rebecca made a comment about the listening section of that placement test is really tough. And so we have experienced, like most people, even if, they're quite proficient in reading and writing and grammar, but they don't do so well on that listening comprehension, and then they just get placed at the beginner level. So the other kind of workaround is you can, have the students retake the placement test. That's really, you teach them to go into their settings, and then they can retake the placement test as many times as they want. And there's only one placement test, so they will get the same questions every time. So
that's a good
point.
They
can improve by retaking it.
Yeah, so if anything, it could be a great teaching moment of taking a test. I don't know. You could use it how you want to. And I know it's a little clunky right now. But that's why we're trying to share that with you so you're aware of it. Going into it, you kind of know what to expect. You can try to maybe skip it and see if your settings, if they're changed, like Elizabeth pointed out, if that helps. So maybe a few workarounds if you can. But Ellii Solo is something I'm really getting a lot of my students onto right now. I'm helping them save it onto their home screen right now, because with winter break coming up, we're going to see if we can make sure they have access to that. And not just for Ellii Solo, also for just their home or their classes, they're going to have access to those things. So it's been really helpful so far. So it's just trying to figure out how to get over these few humps of clunkiness.
I've got a question in the chat about, can we get distance learning hours for printing off the PDFs? Unfortunately, the answer is no. You cannot get distance learning hours that way because Ellii is so vast. There are so many different types of activities, all of different lengths and varying levels of difficulty, that we haven't really developed a fair system for awarding proxy hours for printed materials. So they are going to need to do the digital tasks. That is how you will generate your distance learning proxy hours. The one way to potentially use printed materials is if you are a TVM certified teacher and you want to use paper-based Ellii content as part of a TVM lesson. But you must be a TVM certified teacher to do that. Rebecca asks in the chat, how are other programs handling contact hours versus proxy hours when you're using the online platform?
I could speak that just a little bit. We are in the middle of trying to figure some of that out because it's been a little bit of a headache. One thing we're gonna try to do, because again, we really value using Ellii in person right now, because it's when they come down, it's a way for them to apply that here and also get to know how to use the platform while they're with people who can give them support. So for at the moment, we are going to try first that they use regular Ellii here, the regular Ellii classes, and then Ellii Solo when they're home. We know that's not going to be a perfect distinction. They're going to use lots of things, but I'm going to try to encourage that right now, that Ellii Solo is more for home. But I'm not going to stop them from using regular Ellii classes. But then when I track the proxy hours, I'm just going to look at Ellii Solo for now. But also over the break, since you can, like in the reports, look at a certain chunk of time, again, someone correct me if I'm wrong, but what we might try is also, some teachers do want to assign their, we use ventures here. So when they have Ellii ventures, which people really like, they're going to assign some of their study packs over the break. And then hoping if students use that as well, I will go in and track just the time that they're not having class during the break. So then we can also use that. So we're just trying to figure, it's still messy, but that's something we're thinking of doing. Again, anyone correct me if that doesn't make sense, but that's a hope that we're going to attempt. Anyone else have something, like any of our other presenters or Elizabeth have any other suggestions of how it works for people better?
Well, you can see I answered that. I did put a response in the chat. We have to let our admin person know when we specifically have the students using Ellii on their phones, because that's obviously more like distance learning. And so whatever amount of time we use that in the classroom, I just sent her like, okay, today we did 35 minutes in class on the phones. And then when she pulls off the report, I know it's a nightmare for her, but she's got to go through and subtract all of those minutes that all the teachers have reported. But then at least we're not double dipping and counting classroom hours and DL hours at the same time. So I'm sure it's cumbersome for her, but it works.
That was something we discussed because I've heard that people do that, and we're like, maybe we'll get to that eventually if we do. But yeah, so that's helpful to share as a strategy.
Well,
Tammy,
we're
did
lucky
you have
too.
one?
We're a small program. There's 4 teachers, so it's not overwhelming.
Katie adds in the chat, all of the time that learners spend logged in doing digital tasks is going to be counted in your reports. So if a teacher is using Ellii during class for the last half hour of class, the teacher just takes attendance in SID using that drop down. Oh, look, everybody left 30 minutes early. So that way you get your contact hours for the class time, and then the time logged into Ellii will be captured. It'll be captured in your distance learning class. Yeah, Stacy is concurring. That's what we are planning to do too. If it's Ellii, then it's proxy hours. Try not to muddy the waters. I will just show you something else that I think is a useful resource, is folders. I don't know if anyone has explored folders very much, but it's a great way to kind of organize content for yourself, as well as there are folders that have already been created by Ellii, including digital literacy, intermediate advanced, and digital literacy beginning low intermediate. I actually copied materials and shared them. So, oh, really? Well, that's not good. Okay. Well, there you should have under your shared folders, a folder that says digital literacy. It's got some digital literacy emojis. And I kind of curated some of Ellii's content, and selected only things that I thought would be truly beginner level friendly. And it has flashcards and I think some lessons that talk through all the different types of tasks. So like how to do a listening task, which buttons you need to push to hear the audio again, to record yourself speaking, to do the matching activities. It has flashcards and support for all of those. So you can go over that in class to really prepare your learners to be successful when they're away from you.
Cool, yeah. So yeah, for me, the only other thing I just did want to say and emphasize, I really appreciate people kind of pointing out that how like Ellii is really good at just in general to making content accessible for adults, especially here at Learning in Style. We have so many adults learning English, some at very low levels, and some of us will still use Moby Max for some really, really low students. But it's nice to have something that's actually created for adults that gives them maybe low level things but still for adults, and also vice versa, where it's like adult type content, like some hard topics there, or just something that it really stays maybe relevant and it stays updated with things going on, and it gives maybe students with low levels of English or other literacy in general, access to those things instead of it just being something created for young children. So we love that a lot. So
and then a great question in the chat, who can we contact if we need help? You can always, if it's more of a technical issue that you think is probably something with Ellii's platform, I would encourage you to contact Ellii directly. It's just hello@ellii.com. If it's something more specific to Minnesota adult education, we have a help desk. And Katie and I love answering help desk tickets. So that it's a kind of an absurdly long email, but it's in the chat for you to copy. And I will include it in the follow-up email to this session as well. Yeah, and generally, Jordan says Ellie's help desk response is pretty speedy. Yeah, you usually get a response within a day or two. And we are at time, so I will stop the recording now. Thank you so much for attending. I can stay on for a few more minutes, though, if you have additional questions or things you want to discuss. Thanks, everyone.